What's up, everybody? Got a lot of people that ask me to build traps for them for catching mud minnows, or ask how I do it, or usually they want me to build them for them. But I'm going to show you guys how I build these traps. Pretty simple. Does take a little bit of time. You know, everything's done by hand. I'm going to start with the materials, the tools, and work through fast as I can, making a video to show you guys exactly what tricks I use. And the most important thing about these traps is the entrance for the minnows to go through. So let's get started. All right, let's talk about the tools that I use. First tool, simple tape measure. Get all your measurements and a permanent marker to mark on the material. So you're going to measure out and then make your marks with a permanent marker. These are absolutely critical to making a trap that will not cut and poke you. And reason I say that is as you cut, you can use dikes, all right, which you're going to use these in certain portions of this project. But when you're cutting long runs or anything like that, when you can get this nice smooth flat edge right against the bar, you can get a real nice clean cut. Matter of fact, there is a small little tip sticking out there, and this will clean that right off. So had I cut this with these snips originally, that wouldn't even have been there. Okay, of course we're going to use a pair of just regular side cutters or dikes and a hog ring plier. So this hog ring plier is pretty decent one. You know, it's got rubber handles, it's spring loaded, and it crimps really well. All right, and then the materials. What I'm using is a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch galvanized hardware cloth, they call it. It is 19 gauge. You can go heavier, you can go thinner. I wouldn't recommend thinner. 19 or heavier is probably the best. The riggers that you put these through, like stacking them and strapping them down and things like that, they need to have some rigidity to them. And plus, they will, if they're real thin, they'll just break real easy, and the wires will come unwelded, and you'll end up with a nightmare of a trap that doesn't last very long. It'll work the same, but it just won't last very long. So the other thing that I use are 3/8 galvanized hog rings. Okay, get the camera down looking this way. So these are hog rings right here. They're a 3/8 inch galvanized hog ring. I've used the stainless steel ones. They last longer, but they are a lot harder to crimp, and these crimp a lot easier. And when they crimp, these will overlap and tighten up a little better. The stainless ones wanted to just come together like this, and it left it real loose. So I definitely prefer the galvanized over the stainless steel. One other material that I use is the just bungee straps. I just order these on Amazon. I'll show you how I do that. I end up cutting them in half, so I get actually 2 gate latches out of 1 bungee strap. Really cheap. I use the hog rings to fold it over the trap and then lock it down with a hog ring like this. I'll show you how that's done later. And the other material is going to be a float of your choice. I find these to be the cheapest way to buy them. These are pool floats that you put across like the deep end of the pool. You get them on Amazon. You get like 25 of these for 30 bucks. If you try to actually buy a float for a trap, those things can be $3 to $6 a piece. So this is a much cheaper option. Just going with, you know, some type of, you know, do your homework, find the cheapest float you can. You don't want big floats. When you put these out, you put them in shallow water. You see, the other thing I use is paracord just for the rope. And it doesn't take a whole lot. You can see I'm only maybe 18 inches deep there. Very seldom do these traps ever go to where these floats will go underwater, because they're not strong enough to lift the trap up. Here is the bungee cord that I was talking about. Here's the way I've hog ringed, cut it in half, hog ringed it over the gate. Just drop it down, latch it like so. Same thing with the paracord, tie a quick knot, and then I use the hog rings to install that. All right, we'll talk about dimensions. The material I order is 2 foot in width from here to here, okay? So I do math in my head. These traps don't have to be really big. And based on, you know, trial and error, I have come up with, if you're going to buy the 2 foot tall material or 3 foot tall, as long as it's in 1 foot increments, the way you have to cut these traps, you end up with like a certain amount of waste. When you cut one of these traps and you're trying to cut, let's just say you're cutting the side right here, and you'll always end up with this piece of barbs that you have to remove. So you just lost a ½ inch out of your trap. So with that being said, calculations, making the most out of your material, I make these traps 7.5 inches tall from bottom to top. So I cut it down to 7.5, and then you have a little bit of waste, like one little section of waste where there's one single bar, and then you'll have the barbs that are sticking off of it. So very, very little waste, and so 7.5, not 8, and then I make these 11.5 instead of 12 for the same reason. So when I cut all this out, working with the material that I'm using, it works out great where your tops, you know, if you have, let's just say you've got to cut a top, and this is 12 by 12, and then you've got 2 wide on a 24-inch piece, well, you lose that half. Well, when you lose that half, it's the next top isn't going to fit on top. So, or bottom, it's going to be too small. So if you do 11.5, you reduce the waste tremendously, and it works out in your 1 foot increments using hardware cloth. Again, that it has everything to do with the fact that when you cut, you always lose a section. Every time, if there was a section here and I cut it off, well, say that's 8 inches. Well, this would now be 7.5, because if it was a 16-inch piece, because I've got to cut this off. This is useless right here for sides and tops. Now, this comes in real handy for the entryways, and I'll get into that. This is actually an entryway before it's been bent. It's cut 7 wide, which is 3.5 inches this way, and then 14 this way. So it is 7 horizontal bars with the points above, and 14 horizontal bars with no points. And what happens with this is I just take it over 3 fingers and I bend it, grabbing it at the top, and I rotate this thing like this and make those come together. And basically I've created the shape. I kind of clean that up a little bit of the way this thing is going to look inside the trap. It'll be a funnel. It's going to be wide where my left hand is, and it'll come together and be narrow here, and essentially forces the minnows to come in no matter where they come in this larger opening, because this will be spread out like so. They'll come in and they'll just kind of have to be forced up and in. All right, so that's a real key, critical part about how these traps are made, but you'll see how that all goes together and how it's all installed as we go.
Check it, yeah. Yo, check it, yo, I know you reap what you sow, but tell me where you go when you feeling this low. It's like a sideshow, the way we go to